I grew up in a small town in Louisiana. My parents ran a landscaping business, and we lived in a modest house on the edge of town. Our neighborhood was quiet, and I spent most of my time playing with my friends and helping my dad with his work. One of my dad's employees, Al, lived down the street from us. He was an older guy, probably in his 50s, with a scruffy gray beard and a beer gut that stretched his t-shirt to its limits. He always smelled like cigarettes and alcohol, and he had a bad habit of slurring his words. Al was never my favorite person, but my dad seemed to trust him, so I didn't question it. Besides, I didn't have to interact with him much, since I was usually at school or playing with my friends whenever he came to work. One day, though, things took a dark turn. It was a warm afternoon, early in the summer, and I had just gotten home from school. My parents weren't home yet, so I had the house to myself. I was planning to spend the afternoon playing video games and snacking on junk food, but then there was a knock on the door. I peered through the window next to the front door, and I saw Al standing there on our porch, looking disheveled and out of sorts. My parents had always warned me to be cautious about strangers, and Al definitely fit the bill. Although not technically a stranger, I thought he deserved the same treatment. But then Al spoke, and his voice was slurred and shaky.
"Hey there, little buddy,"
he said.
"How's it going?"
I didn't like the way he called me little buddy, like I was a child or a pet, but I tried to be polite. I opened the door, but looking back, I can't explain why. I guess I just didn't have the confidence to tell that guy to screw off. It's going okay," I said. "What do you need?" Al's eyes flickered around nervously, like he was trying to come up with an answer on the spot.
"Oh, nothing much,"
he said.
"Just wanted to say hi, and maybe show you something cool."
Something about the way he said "show you something cool" didn't sit right with me. I wanted to slam the door in his face and call my parents, but I didn't want to risk getting him angry. "I don't think my parents would like that," I said, trying to sound firm but not confrontational. Al's eyes narrowed.
"Come on, kid,"
he said.
"Don't be a square. It'll just take a minute. I promise."
I shook my head no. "Sorry, I can't. Maybe another time." Al's expression darkened, and he took a step closer to me. He was standing halfway in the door. Now I couldn't even close it if I wanted to.
"Listen, kid,"
he said.
"I think you're gonna like what I have to show you, and if you tell anyone about it, I'll make sure you regret it."
My hands were shaking now, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I knew I had to do something. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, dialing my dad's number as quickly as I could. "Hey Dad," I said. "Al's here, and he's acting weird. Can you come home?" My dad's voice was calm and reassuring. "Stay put," he said. "I'm on my way." I hung up and looked back at Al, who was now standing in the doorway, his eyes locked on me.
"What's going on, kid?"
he said, his tone shifting from menacing to almost pleading.
"Why are you calling your dad?"
I took a step back and clutched my phone tightly. "You need to leave," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. Al's expression twisted into a snarl.
"Fine,"
he spat.
"You'll regret this. You and your whole family."
He turned and stumbled down the steps, disappearing around the corner of the house. I watched him go. I was relieved, but also really scared. A few minutes later, my dad pulled into the driveway. I ran outside to meet him. My legs were wobbly with relief. "What's going on?" he asked. I could tell he was furious. I told him everything, my words tumbling out in a rush. My dad listened patiently, and his face was growing angrier by the second. "That piece of crap," he muttered. I knew he was trouble. My dad marched over to Al's house, still wearing his work clothes and carrying his heavy boots. I trailed behind him like a lost dog. Al was sitting on his porch with a beer in his hand. He looked up as we approached. He could barely sit up straight, he was so drunk.
What do you want?
He slurred. My dad stepped up to him, his face inches from Al's. You know damn well what I want, he growled. What the hell were you doing at my house, trying to lure my son away? Al's face went slack with surprise.
I wasn't doing anything,
he said, his voice rising in pitch.
I just wanted to say hi.
My dad didn't buy it, and grabbed Al by the collar of his shirt and pulled him to his feet. You're done, he said. Fired. And if you ever come near my family again, I'll make sure the whole town knows what kind of scum you are. Al stumbled backwards, tripping over his own feet. He fell onto his porch and spilled his beer onto the ground. My dad turned on his heel and stormed back towards our house, leaving Al sputtering and cursing behind him. The whole incident really scared the crap out of me. I couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if my dad hadn't come home when he did. What if Al had managed to grab me and pull me into his house? I don't even know what that guy was capable of. My dad tried to reassure me and told me that he would always be there to protect me, and that Al was just one bad apple in a mostly good town. It was still really creepy knowing that he was living so close. For a few weeks after the incident, I didn't sleep so well. I kept imagining Al lurking around outside our house, waiting for his chance to get me. But gradually, as time passed and nothing happened, I began to relax. I still avoided Al whenever I saw him around town, but I didn't feel like I was in imminent danger anymore. A few years later, Al's health declined, and he was moved into a care home. I never saw him again after that. A young family moved into his house, and they were really nice. I never told them who Al was and what he tried to do to me. I wouldn't want to know if I was living in that house. I live in the UK, and I go by JMB. I used to live in a quiet area. It was one of those dead-end streets where there's only one way in and one way out. We had good neighbors overall, but there was one neighbor who was a real creep. He was a builder who lived 3 doors down. He would talk to us, which was normal, but he would also bring wine around our house for him and my mom to share. She was a single parent at the time. My mom would decline the offer whenever he proposed it. She wasn't interested in him. He would give me and my sister advent calendars for Christmas. He would also ask me things trying to get closer to us, just when my birthday was, and other stuff like that. I was young at the time, and I didn't realize how creepy he was. What still creeps me out to this day happened at a bonfire night in 2017. I was about 9 at the time. Me and my sister were supposed to go to my dad's house and spend time there and see him. That was when the creep down the road asked us if we were doing anything for the bonfire night. My mom didn't see this as a red flag. She told him that me and my sister were going to my dad's. That meant that my mom would be home alone by herself. Later that day, I decided to stay with my mom instead so she wouldn't get lonely. When night came, my mom and I went to her friend's house. There were other kids my age there, and we got along well. We had fun running around and doing stuff that kids do. It was about 1 in the morning when me and my mom went home. We went straight to bed. I woke up to the sound of something, but I wasn't sure what it was. It was still dark outside, which made me more confused. I opened my bedroom door, and I saw a person walking through my house. At first I thought it was my mom, because I couldn't see who it was, and they didn't react to me opening the door. The layout of our house was that there was a bathroom at the top of the stairs, then my sister's room, then my mom's room, then my room at the end of the hallway. I thought it must be my mom coming back from the bathroom, and the flush of the toilet woke me. The dark figure walked into my mom's room, leaving the door open. I watched and waited, and eventually, the figure walked out of the room and downstairs. Then my mom walked out of her room and into my room and called the police. She was looking outside my window, but she didn't see anyone. The police arrived 5 minutes later, and there were 2 of them. One of them was asking questions, and the other was looking around. The policeman who was looking around said that the back door was broken, probably with something like a screwdriver. My mom said she woke up to a figure standing over her. She thought it was me, so she said my name. Then the figure walked out calmly. I think I made the right choice by staying with my mom. If she hadn't thought it was me, then something worse might have happened. After that, our creepy neighbor didn't speak to us again. I had my suspicions about him, because he was a builder, and obviously had access to tools that could break a simple door lock. And he had that thing for my mom in a creepy manner. He lived a few doors down, so he could have gotten away before the police arrived. Otherwise, they might have seen somebody running away. Because of that, I think it was probably him. I'm a girl, and this happened when I was 19. After my first year of college, I moved into a house off campus. I had made some friends in the dorms, and we decided to move in together. It was an old house, and it was a short bus ride to the school. It wasn't exactly the best spot for students. We weren't able to get a house super close to the school like we wanted, so many of our neighbors were families and other non-students. The house wasn't the nicest place. The paint was peeling in some spots, but it did have a cozy feel to it. We were all excited to finally have our own place to call home. We had all finished our first year, and were eager to start our second. It was a new beginning for all of us, and moving into that house was a first step towards independence. We spent the first few days unpacking and settling into our rooms. I was lucky enough to have the biggest room in the house, with a large window that let in plenty of natural light. My roommates and I quickly fell into a routine of going to classes, studying, and spending time together in the evenings. However, there was something that started to make me feel uneasy. A few doors down from us, there was a man who seemed to always be around. His name was Paul, and he was at least 35 years old, but he tried to act like he was our age. He would often be outside when we were coming or going from the house, and would wave and try to make small talk with us. Don't get me wrong, I'm not mad at him for being friendly, but he didn't know when to take a hint. One time, I saw him on the street, and he asked me what I was doing one evening, clearly angling to ask me out. I said I was really busy with school for the next few weeks. Most people would realize that I was not interested, but he just kept pressing while I walked. He followed me all the way up to my door and asked me on a date. I slipped in the front door and locked it behind me. I watched through the curtains after that, and he stood on our porch for a good 5 minutes before walking away. It was bad already, but it got even worse than that. He would stare at us for long periods of time and make inappropriate comments. We tried to avoid him as much as possible, but it seemed like he was always there, walking by our house or running into him on the street. One night, we decided to have a few friends over for a small gathering. There were 8 of us there, my 3 roommates, 2 of their boyfriends, and then 2 of our other friends. We were all having a good time laughing and talking. We had some music going, but nothing crazy. It was a Friday night, and it was really tame. All of a sudden, we heard a knock on the door. None of us got up to answer before the door opened. We were expecting one of our other friends, so we thought it would be her. However, when I looked up, it was Paul from down the street. He showed up uninvited out of nowhere and walked right into our house. He had clearly been drinking and was trying to act cool in front of our friends. I really wanted him to leave, but I was worried he'd get angry, so I didn't tell him outright. I walked over to my friend Ryan. He was a big guy, 6'4", and he played on the rugby team at our school. I gave him a quick rundown of who the guy was, and asked him to get rid of him nicely. I thought Ryan may have been able to send the message more clearly than I could. The 2 of them started talking, but I could tell it wasn't going well. Ryan tried to stay calm, but Paul started yelling. Before I knew it, he pulled out a knife. Ryan jumped back and put some distance between them. One of my friends called the police, and they arrived within minutes. Paul had put the knife away before the police arrived, but we all told him what happened. He tried to pretend that nothing happened, but he was clearly drunk, and the police believed us. He was arrested and taken away that night. It was a scary wake-up call for all of us, and we realized how vulnerable we were living in that house. He was back the next day because there was not enough evidence to press charges for what he had done. We kept our doors locked and our curtains shut constantly. I even skipped class most of the time so I could avoid going out alone. I would only go out if somebody could go with me. I was really scared. But even with those precautions, Paul continued to make us feel uncomfortable. We would see him outside our house watching us, and sometimes he would even make threatening gestures. Eventually, we decided we couldn't live like that anymore. We broke our lease and found a new place to live. It was a relief to leave that house and the creepy neighbor behind. We were really disappointed that the police weren't able to do anything about that guy. I'm not sure why 8 eyewitnesses wasn't enough to press charges. Paul was a really dangerous guy, and I'll not be surprised if he hurts someone else. I don't even want to find out though. I couldn't even bring myself to look it up online. Something crazy happened last year to me and my girlfriend. We moved into a new apartment together. We would be living together for the first time. It was a fresh start for us in a new city, and we were thrilled to start this new chapter of our lives. The apartment was modern, with white walls and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. Our neighbor Alex was the first person we met in the building. He was tall with short blonde hair and a muscular build. He seemed friendly enough and welcomed us to the building with a smile. We chatted for a few minutes, and he offered to help us move our things in. We declined, but we appreciated the offer. Over the next few days, we saw Alex around our building often. He always greeted us warmly and asked us how we were settling in. Nothing beyond small talk, just standard pleasantries. He seemed like a nice guy, and we were happy to have a friendly neighbor. However, we began receiving threatening notes that were slipped under our door. They were written in a shaky handwriting and were full of angry and violent messages, many of them with poor grammar. We were both frightened and confused. We reported the notes to the building manager, who assured us that he would look into it. We didn't suspect our neighbor Alex. In fact, we couldn't imagine who it could possibly be. The building had decent security, and it would have been hard for an outsider to come in and do that, not to mention that there would be no reason. A few days later, we received another note. This one was more explicit and threatening. It said that if we didn't leave the building, then we would regret it, among other things. We brought the new note to our building's manager, and this time he referred us to the security office. They were able to pull up some security camera footage that I didn't know about. It showed that Alex was the one putting the notes under our door. We were both shocked and frightened. We didn't know what Alex's intentions were, but we knew we had to protect ourselves. We went to the police and showed them the footage. They arrested Alex, who was charged with stalking and making threats. It turned out that he had a history of mental illness and had been off his medication for a while. He had become fixated on us and convinced himself that we were conspiring against him. He had become delusional and started sending us threatening notes to scare us away. We were relieved that Alex was no longer a threat to us, and we felt true sympathy for him. We decided not to press charges when we found out about the situation. This was a mental health issue, not a criminal one. After that experience, we never felt completely safe in our apartment. We ended up moving to a different building a few months later. It was a relief to be able to start fresh again.